be Dr. K.C. Ravindranathan sir, who is a retired principal of College of Engineering Trivandrum and currently working as the principal of Rajdhani Institute of Engineering and Technology, Tirunelveli. Dr. K.C. Ravindranathan holds BSc Engineering in Electronics and Communication Engineering, Master's degree in Electrical Communication Engineering, IISc Bangalore, and PhD in Computer Science and Engineering from University of Kerala. He was a design engineer at Broadcast Transmitters R&D, Bharat Electronics Limited, Bangalore, during 1985 to 1988. Since 1988, he is with academia, having more than 31 years of teaching experience at various government engineering colleges in Kerala. Sir has over 28 publications to his credit, including 5 textbooks, and he has also authored 3 book chapters so far. He is a life member of ISTE, senior member of CSI and IEEE, life fellow and chartered engineer of IE India and IETE respectively. He was the founder chairperson of IEEE Signal Processing Society in IEEE Kerala section. Sir volunteered as a publications chair for 4 international IEEE conferences organized by IEEE Kerala session. He also acted as the reviewer of several reputed international conferences as well. On behalf of ASAP and ASDC division, I welcome you, sir, to deliver today's class. And on this note, I would like to welcome all the attendees to the session. Let me conclude this introductory part by giving the outline of today's class. The entire 1-hour class will be divided into 2 continuous sessions, and each session will have 20 minutes of lecture and 10 minutes of question and answer interaction respectively. And during the interaction time, students may use the question and answer window or chat window to post their questions. All the students are requested to maintain a classroom decorum throughout the session. Dr. K.C. Ravindranathan sir will be available online throughout the entire 1-hour session. Sir, you may please start the session.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the nice introduction, Ashish and Ali. Thanks for the participants sharing this session with me. So today we are mainly focusing on digital image processing module, which is actually an elective course, BTech in Electronics and Communication Engineering. So let us look, probably we will be focusing on image segmentation, which is the first part in image recognition. So this is a summary of the presentation. We'll have an overview of image processing techniques, various techniques, including segmentation, image filtering, image compression and all that. But mainly we will be focusing on image segmentation, which is a widely accepted first step towards image identification by digital computers. And we will consider the different classes of image segmentation techniques. There are regional approach, clustering techniques, and finally we will recapitulate whatever we have discussed. So if we look into the digital image processing per se is actually manipulation of images by a digital computer. In this course, EC370 mainly focuses on the tools and techniques, including the algorithms and the softwares used in digital image processing. So if anyone asks you the question, what is meant by digital image processing, it is nothing but manipulation of an image by a digital computer. So obviously the image has to be digitized. So elements of digital processing are the image digitizer converts intensity variation, and by principle an image is nothing but a 2-dimensional matrix. The intensity variations as functions of x and y coordinates. So you must have an image digitizer in any digital image processing system. Then you get the digital image. Then you will have an image processor which processes the digital image. And then you have an output image renderer which displays the processed image. The processing can be a mere filtering or image enhancement or image segmentation or whatever. Right? So this presentation mainly focuses on image segmentation. In the previous modules, you may have come across image enhancement, image restoration, and so on. So as I said earlier, this session we mainly focus towards image segmentation techniques, principles and practices, and algorithms. Then in the last module, we will be dealing with image compression. Then we'll also consider some of the applications of image processing and the algorithms. So the main purpose of image segmentation, as I said earlier, is to recognize recognize the image digitally, pattern recognition, which has several applications in industrial electronics and in several other fields, in economics, biology, bioinformatics, so on and so forth, medical imaging and all that, right? So normally image processing involves processes to improve the quality of images for display or rendering. And purpose of digital image segmentation is to analyze the contents of the image. So possibly we will be segregating an image into its constituent parts for detailed analysis later. And there are two approaches. One is statistical pattern recognition, and the other one is using artificial neural networks. Then segmentation of non-trivial images is one of the most difficult tasks in image processing, which we'll come across shortly. Now, image segmentation is the foremost step in pattern recognition. So you try to analyze an image by segmenting it and try to identify the components. So such applications of typical image segmentation are in pattern recognition. Like you can even use that in image processing in the case of a roadside image or a video where you want to identify or you want to segregate moving objects, human beings, cars, vehicles, and so on. So in such a case, try to segment the image into different parts and try to identify by using image processing techniques. Then the second step after segmentation is image extraction, and finally you classify, which is the third part. So these are the three building blocks of pattern recognition using a digital computer. So this slide shows the three phases in digital pattern recognition. You have an input image which has several shapes and geometrical figures like triangular, circular, a road shape and a star shape and all that. So you segment the image. You have a huge image, you segment it, and you have an object image, which is in this case is a road or a bar, and you have a feature extraction mechanism involved hardware and software, where you have a feature vector and you extract the features and compare it with the feature vector. And after classification, we come to know that the object image is indeed a bar. So this shows the three phases of pattern recognition. So what is actually meant by image segmentation? So it is a process that partitions the image into disjoint, non-overlapping regions. A region is a connected set of pixels. As I said, any image, static image can be considered to be an intensity variation where the independent variables are x and y, and independent variable is intensity for the color information. So in the case of a black and white image, which is a two-dimensional metric, can be represented as a two-dimensional metric. So is I of x and y, where x and y are the x and y coordinates of the image, and I is the dependent vector, which can take various values. Depending on the file type you use to store the image, you have different formats and in memory requirements. So a region is nothing but a connected set of pixels. Now let us look into the region approach in which it assigns each pixel to a particular object or a region. Then you also have a boundary approach in which we try to locate boundaries that exist between the regions. And you finally have the edge approach in which we seek to identify edge pixels. We'll try to implement all those things using image processing toolbox of MATLAB as well. And before we do that, we will try to understand the underlying principles and algorithms used to implement this MATLAB image processing toolbox. So image segmentation can be done by thresholding, in which thresholding is particularly useful for scenes containing solid objects resting on a contrasting background. So if you threshold an image by setting a threshold, we can identify a particular region in an image, and by that means we can segment an image if there is a significant intensity variation in an image which is there normally. Then you have the global thresholding technique, means the value of the threshold available is held constant throughout the image. Then you have an adaptive thresholding, uses a threshold gay level that is slowly varying function of the position of the image. This is more practical because quite often in an image there is a slight variation in the intensity level from one part of the image to the other part. Then you have to decide on the optimal threshold selection to obtain optimum image segmentation. So basically, we can detect a point in an image, a line in an image, or an edge in an image. Detection of three basic types of intensity discontinuities are possible. One is the points, next one is the lines, or the edges. So if you look into point detection, it involves computing the sum of products of the coefficients with the intensity levels contained in the region encompassed by the mask M, capital M, where Zi is intensity of the pixel associated with mask coefficient Wi, which is the weighting factor. Normally we use a typical mask, which is a 3 by 3 matrix. The first row contains all -1, second row contains -1, 8, and -1, and the third row also contains -1, -1, and -1. It is interesting to note that the sum of all the weights in this is 0, because if you add 8 minus 8, which is the sum of all other elements in this matrix, it is 0. The response R of the matrix at any point the image is given by. So what you do is you multiply the actual image with all the points in the image with this in this fashion. Weight W1 into Z1, which is the intensity, then W2 into Z2 plus etc. up to W9 into Z9, because there are 9 values in this intensity mass coefficient matrix. So that it can be written as summation I running from 1 to 9 Wi into Zi. So using this technique, we can detect points. Using the mask M, we say that an isolated point has been detected at the location on which the mask is centered if absolute value of R is greater than T, where 3 is a non-negative threshold. So this can be implemented using a simple MATLAB function, IM filter. In fact, we can try out this function. The first value around that. So this program, we will try to run this program in the MATLAB environment and see that. This is a point detection simple case. So we are using the image processing toolbox function, image filter, right? So we'll try to run that and see the results. First, it reads the cameraman file, which is a typical image, a typical sample image.
എനിക്ക് ഇന്നലെ
Then
തലവേദന
it converts the TIFF file into GMP format and then process it using the image processor. So this problem, this program, what it does actually is to identify various points or try to find out the intensity variations of here. See, these points are identified. This is the original picture, the black and white BMP file. And these are the other processed image. And finally, we can identify the points which are part of this image. We will get back to the presentation. So this was the sample program which we have seen execution. Now, for line detection, on the other hand, so we can identify lines which are oriented at plus 45 degrees or minus 45 degrees or with a horizontal orientation or vertical orientation. And these are the marks used for those lines. For the horizontal orientation, the middle array is containing 2's. There are all other elements of the matrix AM is containing a -1. Whereas for a vertical mask, is the other way. All elements in the 3x3 matrix except the second row contains -1, and the second row contains all elements 2. Whereas for a plus 45 line, a line which is counterclockwise 45 degrees orientation, this is the matrix, and this is for -40. The coefficients of each mask sums to 0, indicating a 0 response in areas of constant intensity. This is the basic principle in line and mask detection. So how do you detect a line? So let us find out the values R1, R2, R3, and R4 based on the 4 values, right? M1, M2, M3, and M4. And when you do this computation, I running from 1 to 9, Wi into Zi, where Zi is the intensity of the particular. This we have to do for the entire image, so it involves sort of multiplications and summations. And when the 4 masks are run individually through the image, at a certain point in the image, the Ri will be greater than Rj for all j not equal to I. And that point is more likely to be associated with the line in the direction favored by the mask I. So a particular mask, say for example, R1 can be obtained using the mask M1 or MH. R2 can be used for MB, vertical line. This is plus 45 and this is minus 45. And we find that at one particular mask Ri, so suppose the horizontal line, the response after the multiplication is greater than, the absolute value is greater than Rj, then that particular point is more likely to be associated with the line in that direction favored by the mask I. We'll also try to implement this again. Then the other technique is using gradient, edge detection using gradient. This is also a well-known technique. Therefore, it is the most common approach in image segmentation. Discontinuities in intensity are detected using first and second order derivatives of the intensities. The first order derivative is the gradient. The gradient of a two-dimensional function f of x, y, this is actually the intensity of the image, is defined as del f, and it is a column vector of gx and gy. Gx is dou f by the partial derivative with respect to x, and this is partial derivative of intensity function with respect to y. And before we do this, we will again get back to MATLAB and see how the edge detection is done. a simple MATLAB script to run. So this is edges. We'll also see the original figure, original image. So this is the original image, which is an electronic PCB, and by this technique we can find out the edges, right? So very simple program. We'll get back to the presentation. So edge detection by using gradient involves these following stages. The magnitude of this vector is actually delta f represented by delta f, delta small f. This is the magnitude of this vector delta f, which is actually the square root of the sum of squares, right? So this can be written as gx square plus gy square whole raised to 1 by 2. So that is dou f by dou x square plus dou f by dou y square all raised to 1 by 2. To simplify the computation, so this involves a squaring and a square rooting. So it is computationally intensive because we have to do it for the entire cell elements, pixels. To simplify computation, this quantity is approximated sometimes by omitting the square root. So you approximate it to ex square plus gy square, because normally these values are quite small, so this approximation holds good. Or we can even sometimes take the absolute value of gx and gy and sum it to get a expression for delta f. Now we can also use the Laplacian of f, which is actually the second derivative. Laplacian of a 2D function is actually del square f of xy. F of xy is actually the image in physical form, which is an intensity variation in terms of the x and y coordinates, which is dou square f by dou x square, dou square f by dou y square, summed together. The Laplacian is seldom used directly for edge detection, as it is unacceptably sensitive to noise and unable to detect edge detection because it takes the second derivative, which is highly sensitive to noise. However, it is used along with other methods. Now, you will see the edge detection using MATLAB function edge. There is a MATLAB image processing toolbox function called edge, which takes an intensity or a binary image I as its input and returns a binary black and white image of the same size as I, with ones where the function finds edges in I and zeros elsewhere. So edge supports 6 different edge finding methods. It can be either Sobel, Revit, Roberts, Laplacian of a gradient, zero crossing, or Canny. The default method is obviously Sobel. We'll now look at the typical code using the edge function. We read an image, then you convert it into another image by this function, edge function. The syntax is edge, the input image, and the method. Method is actually the Sobel, Privit, Canny, then the previous one, zero crossing, or Laplacian, or robots, etc. They will decide the mask which we really use to obtain the converted image. I will see how the output will look like when we implement this. Sorry. get back to the MATLAB environment. Uh, so, so in this case, this program, it reads the circuit image and it processes first using a Sobel function, then uses a pivot functions, then Canny and Laplacian of Gaussian, right? These are actually the filters which are used to process the image. We will again run it. So this is the resulting image of Sobel. This is for pivot and this is for Canny, and last one is for the log filter. Okay. So I think you can even compare the quality for a particular type of image. One particular filter here in this case, I think can it produce a better result compared to the other? Finding out the edges. The edges are more or less contiguous in the case of the Canny filter. Others are not as good as that. Followed by log and pivot and so on. Sobel is the default filter we will use. So if you do not specify anything here, it will be taken as, if I simply say edge I, Sobel filter is taken, which is the default. We will continue with the presentation. Yeah, this we have seen. Then see, there is a limitation of all these 5 or 6 different techniques filtering. Is that when the image is noisy, it is quite often the case. All these methods do not perform well. They perform very badly. The image is corrupted by noise. As we all know that quite often this is the case. So what we do is we use the Haupt transform, which uses the parametric equation for a line. A line, normally we can write a line, an equation for a line is y is equal to x plus c, or in the parametric form it can be written as rho equals x cos theta and y sin theta. The computational advantage of the Haupt transform arises from subdividing the rho theta parameter space, so-called accumulator cells. So where we have a minimum value for rho and a maximum value for rho, plus minimum value for the second parameter theta minimum and theta maximum. These are the expected ranges of the parameters rho and theta respectively. And we can find that usually rho lies between minus d and plus d, and theta lies between minus 90 and plus 90. D is the farthest distance in opposite corners in an image. So, but if you look at image, a particular image, this is the point where the indices are 0, 0, and this is the point where the indices are maximum, right? So we can likewise find out d plus d and minus d and minus 90 and plus 90. There are limiting cases for d and theta. So a function is available in the image processing toolbox of MATLAB again for implementing this transform. The image processing toolbox in MATLAB gives actually three functions related to the house transform. First one is how, which implements the house transform. And the second one is the how peaks, which finds the peaks or high count accumulated cells in the how transform. And the last one is the how lines, which extracts the line segments in the original image based on the results of the about how and how peaks. We'll now look into a typical code. It's slightly lengthy, so we clear and close all variables. Read the typical circuit image, and you apply the how transform to that image, plot the result. Then we will find out it and row values and try to plot the edges detected using the how transform. I will try to go back to the MATLAB environment and run this code. This is the code which we have seen. We run that. I will enlarge the bigger window. Yeah. In fact, we are asked to find out the four edges in this circuit image, original image, and we superimpose. So we are trying to obtain the plus 45 and minus 45 lines. 3 lines. This is actually plus 45 lines. These are plus 45 lines, and these are because these are counter clockwise rotation. These are counterclockwise. Right. So this is the result using the how transform, how to detect it. We'll get back to the presentation. So these are the typical results which we have already seen in that environment. Then we'll look into the clustering techniques for image segmentation. The main goal of clustering is to differentiate the objects in an image using similarity and dissimilarity between the regions. The cluster analysis is to partition an image dataset into a number of disjoint groups or clusters. And these are the three most popular algorithms or methods. First one is the K nearest neighbor classification method. Second one is the K means clustering. This is a simple and iterative method. And the last one is fuzzy C means clustering. And later on, we have invented techniques which combine one or two of these basic three. Okay, we look into all the three one after another. Let us start with the K nearest neighbor classification. It is actually a supervised learning algorithm. That means we have a typical data set which is used to train the system, right? So this is supervised learning algorithm. It takes a bunch of labeled points and uses them to learn how to label other points, right? So we know which points are in the cluster and which are not. And you use that training data set to make the system learn classification. To label a new point, it looks at the labeled points closest to that new point, which are in its nearest neighbors, and has those neighbors what. So where the maximum votes decide which one is your neighbor, we have a impressive simulation by which the principle will be very clear. So whichever label, the most of the neighbors have it, as the label for the new point. So whenever you come across a new point, we'll see which are its neighbors and what are the distances from the neighbors. And we segregate the new point to that group where the distance is a nearest neighbor classification, where k is the number of neighbors it gets. So for any random data set, we can classify 4 or 5 or anything greater than 2 or more clusters, and that number of clusters or number of neighbors will be the value of k. So the algorithm can be stated like this. First, determine the value for k. K can be usually greater than or equal to 2. Then calculate the distance between the new point, test data, and all training data. The most commonly used metrics for calculating distance are Euclidean, Manhattan, and Minkowski. We'll see what is meant by this. Euclidean distance is actually the difference between the coordinates x, y, etc., and you square it. You add them and take the square root. That is Euclidean sum. Manhattan sum is actually the absolute distance, and Minkowski is actually general case. We'll look into the definition of these distance calculations later. So you can choose any of these distances to find out the distance between the neighbors. Sort the distance and determine k nearest neighbors based on minimum distance values. Analyze the category of those neighbors and assign the category for the test data based on majority vote. Return the predicted class and stop. That is the last. And then all the points in the data set are classified, we stop. So we'll now look into the definition of the Euclidean distance, Manhattan distance, and Minkowski distance. We'll see that Minkowski distance is a general case. So it has an order p, and when p becomes 2, we get the Euclidean distance, and when p becomes 1, we get the Manhattan distance, right? So these are the definitions. Euclidean distance d2 of x comma y, and generalizing the values, I mean the vectors x and y as n dimensional. Normally in an image we have only x1 and x2. It's a 2-dimensional. I mean, we have only 2 values, x and y, and only say x1 y1 and x2 y2, that kind of. So what you do is you take the difference between x1 and x2, x1 and y1 and square it, plus similarly you take x2 and y2, take the difference and square it, and the square of take the sum of the squares and take the square root, then you will get Euclidean distance. It's actually the physical distance in the Euclidean space. Whereas in Manhattan distance, you just take the difference between x and y and sum it, right? So you take x1 minus y1, and you take the absolute difference, absolute value, plus you add x2 minus y. So this is quite easy to compute because it does not involve squaring and square rooting, whereas this is the most difficult. And there is a limiting case for this distance, which when p tends to infinity, where normally p is taken as any integer, we get the Chebyshev distance. This is also used in image processing applications. So using these 3 distance values, we can decide whether a particular point is contained in which cluster. So this is the starting point of a nearest neighbor algorithm. We'll see an animation so that the principle will be clear to you. So we assume that there are 3 clusters. Initially, actually there are 4 clusters, green points, right? So it will calculate all the distances, and it adjusts the cluster center so that the distances will be minimum. This is the starting point. Initially randomly assigns 4 cluster centers and calculates the distances between all the points, right? Then it adjusts the centers in such a way that there are ultimately there are only 4 cluster centers, and these cluster centers satisfies the condition, and there are all the points in a particular cluster are said to belong to that cluster. We will have another animation also. This is the next one. So this is the k-means clustering. Initially, we assume that there are 3 clusters. The step 1, step 2, step 3, etc. Step 9. So these black stars are the cluster centers, and the point at which it stops is the step 10, right? It means iteration 10 stops where the distances will be minimum from the centers to all the elements of the respective. Get back to the presentation. Now the second algorithm is the k-means algorithm. K-means algorithm is an unsupervised, whereas the k nearest neighbor was a supervised algorithm. Unsupervised means there is no training data set involved. So initialize the number of cluster k and the centroid of each cluster. So we have to compute the centroid of each cluster. For every pixel of an image, calculate the Euclidean distance d using the distance relation d is equal to rho p of xy minus ck, where ck is the centroid. Pxy is the pixel at point xy, and you can ck is the center of the 8th cluster. We calculate the distance from the centroid to each point in the cluster. And the third step is assign all pixels to the nearest neighbor, nearest center, based on Euclidean distance. After all pixels are been assigned, a new position of the center is recalculated using the equation. Ck is calculated as 1 by k into summation over of all y and x over e of xy, and repeat the process until it satisfies the tolerance value or error value. So this is another simulation starting point. The original clusters, I will again run a simulation so that the idea will be clear. It's a k nearest neighbor classification. It initially starts checking the distance between this point to the other point, and we want to identify to which cluster it belongs, green or brown, right? What it does is it calculates the distances and see that it is more closer to the green balls than to the brown balls, right? So this cluster I have only, and we choose k as 5. So it will check only the 5 points adjacent to it. Besides that, it is green and it changes the color to green. And this is done for all the points in the cluster. Okay. I think we'll get back to the presentation. Now the third one is fuzzy C-means clustering. In fuzzy clustering, data points can potentially belong to multiple clusters. This is the idea behind fuzzy sets. You might have come across fuzzy sets and fuzzy logic earlier, where everything is decided to a degree. It is not a 0-1 case or a hard computing or hard clustering case. So, for example, an apple can be red or green, which is a hard clustering method. But an apple can also be red and green, which is a fuzzy clustering. In fuzzy clustering, say for example, whether you want to decide whether an apple is red or green, part of it can be red and part of it can be green. And we will decide, we assign membership values for all these variables. So membership dates are assigned to each of the data points or tags. These membership grades indicate the degree to which data points belong to each cluster. So they can assign values between 0 and 1, both inclusive in the case of fuzzy clustering. This points on the edge of a cluster with lower membership grades because they are farther away from the center of the cluster. Maybe in the cluster to a lesser degree than points in the center of the cluster. Center of the cluster means they're close to the center, so the distance is small. So the value of membership approaches unity. Whereas in other case, which are farthest, membership grades are close to 0. It is one of the most widely used fuzzy clustering algorithm is the fuzzy C-means clustering or FCM algorithm. Actually, FCM is actually implemented in the fuzzy toolbox, fuzzy logic toolbox of MATLAB as a function, FCM. Look into that. And fuzzy C-means FCM clustering was developed by J.C. Dunn in 1973 and improved by J.C. Prescott 1981. And this is the algorithm. It's very similar to the K-means algorithm. First, it chooses the number of clusters, which is actually K. Assign coefficients randomly to each data point for being in the clusters, right? Then repeat until the algorithm has converged. That is, the coefficients change between two iterations is no more than epsilon, which is the minimum value, which is the sensitivity threshold. But if it is less than epsilon, we stop. Otherwise, we compute the centroid for each cluster, and for each data point, compute its coefficient of being in the cluster, right? So computation of centroid is done like this. Any point X has a set of coefficients giving the degree of being in the kth cluster, which is having a weight of Wk of X. With fuzzy C means the centroid of a cluster is the mean of all points weighted by the degree of belonging to the cluster, or mathematically Ck is equal to summation Wk of X to the power m multiplied by x, that whole summation divided by summation of entire x, Wk of x to the power m, where m is the hyperparameter that controls how fuzzy the cluster will be. The higher it is, the fuzzier the cluster will be in the end. So these are the applications of clustering. Apart from image processing, clustering is applied to problems from the following domains: surface sciences, biology, bioinformatics, medicine, psychology, and economics, where in all these cases, we are trying to group different data points and decide to which particular data set, data point or cluster a particular data point is present. And as I said earlier, the fuzzy logic toolbox in MATLAB allows you to find clusters in an input-output training data. The command line function FCM starts with an initial guess for the cluster centers, which are intended to mark the mean location of each cluster. The rules partition themselves according to the fuzzy qualities associated with each of the data clusters to automatically generate this type of fuzzy inference system, or FIS, and can use the GENPIS command. In fact, we will look into typical code. The initial guess for these cluster centers is most likely incorrect. We randomly start with some arbitrary points. Additionally, FCM assigns each data point a membership grade for each cluster. By iteratively updating the cluster centers anti-membership grades for each data point, the FCM function iteratively moves the cluster centers to the right location within a data set. The command line function FCM outputs a list of cluster centers and several membership grades for each data point. We'll get back to the MATLAB environment and see how this is implemented in the fuzzy logic terms. So there is a function called FCM demo, which has a graphical user interface. So we can choose the data set 1, 2, or 3, and so on. Okay. For example, data set 2 we have chosen. This is data set 1, then data set 3, right? And we can decide how many clusters we want, 2, 3, or 4. We can choose 4, and the exponent and the iterations, minimum improvement. It will continue till the epsilon value is less than this, right? To start the, this is the final position, right? So in fact, we can choose lesser number of, say, three clusters. And if you want to see the membership function, you can also do that by asking it. I mean, if you click at this point, this is the membership value. As I said, the values can vary from 0 to. So in fact, we can get more help on using this typing help FCM. You see this? So you have a data set and the number of clusters. And if you apply that, you'll get the cluster sender and view an object function, right? And there are different options. Typical code is also given here.
Sir, we are clearing the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think we have nearly finished the presentation. I'll sum it up.
Sure, sir. After summing up, I will ask few questions raised with the students.
Okay, thank you. So we considered the following: the overview of image processing techniques and image segmentation, which is the first step towards digital recognition of patterns in an image recognition. It has got several applications in industries, automated industries, industry 4, or even identifying pedestrians from a video, scene, and all that. And classification of image segmentation, we have considered different techniques: point detection, edge detection, and end detection, the region approach, and clustering techniques. And these are the references mentioned in the syllabus: Rafael Gonsalves, digital image processing; Daniel K. Jain, fundamentals of digital image processing; Kenneth Castleman, and Brant William. Actually, apart from this, there is one more book which gives all the machine code, and it's actually an extension to the first reference, again by Gonsalves, Rafael Gonsalves, and others, digital image processing using MATLAB, Data McGraw-Hill, second edition. So all these 5 textbooks will be their requirement, as well as the codes and the university exams and so on. So this Anil K. Jain's book is mostly mathematical. To understand the concepts properly, it may depend on reference 1, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, I think we have nearly covered everything. Now the session is open for questions.
Okay, sir. As we have less time, I will be restricting to nearly 2 questions. The first question is, how is centroid in K-means algorithm identified?
So I think I have shown you in a slide how the centroid is calculated. It is calculated from the initial guess and the distance from the for each pixel from that centroid, and we try to minimize that. And in fuzzy means clustering, the process is somewhat more involved. We have to calculate. We have to recalculate the centroid depending on the values and all that. I think the slides will give you the answer. The mathematical. So the centroid. Okay.
Okay, sir. Clear,
And the
sir.
previous one is here. Yeah. So we actually try to decide the distance between adjacent clusters by taking quite often it is the Euclidean distance. Actually, if you have x1, y1 and x2, y2, is simply x1 minus x2 square plus y1 minus y2 square.
Okay, so that was clear. We will move on to the last question.
Yeah.
The k-means algorithm. In k-means algorithm, we are using a concept of predict the class after finding the distance. So could you please explain the concept of how the predict the class is being done?
Actually, we initially decide that in this whole data of say we assign say 4 or 5 clusters arbitrarily, and we calculate the distance between the cluster center and all the points in the cluster, right? And we assume that, and we have finally we decide depending on the distances, we decide which to which cluster a particular point is deciding by where it gets the minimum distances to its neighbors, right? So it changes or it tries to get into that cluster where the distance is minimum. I think the animation will give you a clear picture of this. Like yeah, the k-means clustering. So there we assume that there are 3 cluster centers, and this is the original data set. And at iteration 1, the cluster centers are arbitrarily chosen initially, but later on we adjust the cluster centers depending on the distances. So we move them here and there in the clusters. We have only 3 clusters here. There is a green cluster, a blue cluster, and a red cluster. The center is changed depending on the distance between the cluster center and all the points in the cluster.
Okay, so that was clear.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we are running short of time, I would like to wind up the session. So thank you, sir, for this wonderful session. Indeed, it was a fruitful one. On behalf of ASAP, and I personally express our sincere gratitude to you, sir, for sparing your